Hello, welcome to Calming the Chaos, where we attempt to find peace in a chaotic world. And as usual, there are very many incidences of chaos in our world. So hello, I'm just wondering how you all are doing today. How is your chaos? What is your chaos level? In mental health counseling, we like to look at it between 0 and 10, 0 meaning no chaos at all, 10 meaning about as chaotic as it ever will get. So where are you? I think I'm okay today. Last week at this time, I think I was still okay. We have had a lot of weird weather stuff happen lately, so there you have it. Weather stuff freaks me out. And we're going to be talking about some weather stuff. We're going to be talking about some of the stuff that's been happening around our nation, especially in Texas. And a lot of those pictures that you just saw in that short little video presentation were of the people in Texas. And I'm sure there's a lot more. Those are the ones that I could find. And it's been really super tough for me to watch what's going on down there. I don't know about you. I'm hoping that people will chime in, and I'm really interested to see how people are doing, because I know that some of my viewers aren't even in the United States. And where I live here in Washington State, we just got completely slaughtered by a snowstorm that we had some advanced knowledge of. And yet some of the ways that I have of thinking are not that great. Probably mostly due to the weather experiences I've had in the past, which we'll go a little bit more into, and how trauma is created in the brain from these experiences, which we'll talk about as well. Because I really want to present the things that you want to hear. And I did hear from one person who wanted to know a little bit more about trauma, PTSD, and we'll start to talk about that. And in the future, I'm hoping to have a colleague on that will help me to talk about trauma and some of the treatment methods that are available for people who are traumatized. And this is rightly a traumatization, I think, for all of us. Even those who aren't in the midst of it, we're watching it on TV, we're hearing about it in the news. And so we're going to talk about some experiences that we've had with various different unexpected situations, and most of them having to do with natural disasters or natural phenomena, if you will, that we have no control over. Yeah, and so I'm going to bring up my husband in just a little bit, Tim, and he is going to help me to talk about some of this weather stuff and some of the things that he has been thinking about. And we're going to have a short film about us and the ever-changing landscape that was our snow-laden experience recently. And I am still not sure if the Texas storm was the same storm that we had, because ours started on a Thursday and theirs came about on a Sunday. So I'm not sure if it was the same weather front, but if it was a doozy for here, and we got through it. So anyway, that's what's on the agenda today. And I don't see anybody in chat having any questions, but I'll just sort of pause right here and see if there's anybody who has any questions. I am working off this list that I have gotten from my viewers, and Crystal had mentioned PTSD. Not all of us suffer from it, but we've all more than likely been through a traumatic event in our lives and how to heal from trauma. So this is what I'm addressing on this live stream. And I've always said I'll be here for as long as people want to listen. And 2 weeks ago, when we were on live, we talked with my colleague Sarah, and we talked about the COVID-19 crisis and about how to lean in to things. And I want to have more discussions like that with mental health professionals who are willing to come on. And that was Violet who brought out that question. And then if you haven't caught it and you would like to know a little bit more about calming the pet chaos, that would be pet loss chaos. I did do a video at the request of I have a problem, and Iva requested that I do a video on pet loss, which I did. So I'm working down this list of items. So if your topic hasn't been addressed, don't worry, we'll get to it eventually. I, in October, purchased a year's worth of StreamYard at a discounted rate. So it's about like $9 a month for a year. So in October, I'll readdress my being here every couple of weeks. Maybe you won't need me anymore. Maybe you will. But until then, I'm just going to be here for whatever people need. Looks like the only people who are brave enough to chat are my trusty wrenches, my husband, Tim, and Pastor Mark, my brother from another mother, right? All right. Well, that's on the agenda. And so I'm going to go ahead. If I get the head nod from Timmy, I will bring him up and we can talk about weather-related chaos. Welcome, Timmy, to the stream. Hello.
Hello, Tracy. How are you?
I'm great. Long time no see.
Yeah, about 2 minutes? Yeah. Actually, no, it's about 7 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know why my nose is running today. It is totally not COVID. Okay, so don't sequester me upstairs and you be downstairs because it's just a little dribble. Nothing to be alarmed about at all. And so, yes. And we might just mention that with all this crazy weather stuff, we are in the middle of a pandemic. And that's the backdrop with which all this stuff happens, right? Hello, Autumn Days. Welcome. I don't know if I've seen you before, but welcome. Oh, from North Ireland. Yeah, I want to know how your weather is, all of you. Well, I know how Timmy's weather is, and I don't know about Mark. Maybe Mark could say a couple of words too, but Autumn, how is the weather in Ireland? I'm very curious to know. So Timmy, where do we want to start here? Do we want to start about like going from the past and your Michigan snow shoveling days with your brothers and go forward to this most recent event? What makes most sense to you? What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, at the beginning of your show, you played that short video clip and showed the people in Texas. And I think that would probably be more the appropriate place to start, maybe is how maybe talk a little bit about that, and then how we at my family dealt with preparing for the snow and dealing with the chaos that ensued, if there was some.
Mm-hmm. Right. So what we do know is I linked to a couple of really good articles. And actually, it was weird because when I was thinking about going on to our bi-weekly live stream, I just Google searched chaos and up came the whole Texas weather thing. And so one of the articles there is from that Google search, and it does have the word chaos in it. And then there's another one as well. They both have really interesting information. The day by day, a week of chaos, I thought was really interesting just to know from Monday through Sunday what people had gone through in Texas. So what do you know? What are your thoughts about what's going on in Texas and what went on? What are your thoughts?
Well, Okay. There's a few things we probably need to dispel here, but is this part of global warming? We don't know that yet. We don't know. I know there's something that has to do with the I forget, it's the polarization of the North and the South Pole, and the shifting or whatnot. But what I do know is the weather system that hit them is probably most likely the same weather system that hit us a week prior. It just takes that long to move through. So they knew it was coming, and I'm not blaming anybody, but the Texans in the South, they knew something like this was on the horizon. We have weather satellites and knew. I still feel sad for them. I still feel sorry. They were ill-equipped to handle such a thing. And since they're not on the national power system, and a little bit of explanation for that is they have their own power system. You have 3 power systems in the United States. You have the East Coast, you have the West Coast, and then you have Texas. Texas always likes to do things on their own. So here was Texas. And what happens on the East Coast or West Coast? See, so if you live in the state of, let's just say, we'll take New York. Everybody knows where New York State is. If the power goes out in New York State, they can draw power from Connecticut, from Massachusetts, from Pennsylvania. They can draw power from those states. They're on the same grid. But Texas is on their own power grid. So if they lose power, they can't draw power from Mississippi or Oklahoma or New Mexico or any place like that. They're on their own. So when it goes, it goes. That's it. And another consequence of that power when it goes out is that they can increase the rates because they're not regulated. So this is what happens. And then 10 years ago, back in 2011, they had this same sort of thing happen where this huge weather system came through and it crippled their state. So they know stuff like this happens, and they never prepared themselves. They didn't winterize. Like for us, where we live, it doesn't get super cold for a super long period of time, but we go out and we put those little styrofoam covers on our water spigots outside. And I know in Michigan, Pastor Mark can attest to this. Sometimes you wrap your pipes in some insulation to keep them from bursting. Well, Texans, they never have to worry about that. So they don't do that sort of thing. Well, this once every 10 years or so, and who knows, it's getting a little bit more frequent now. Something like this can come through and hurt them. So could they have stopped the power outages? Probably not. Could they have better prepared themselves for what had happened? Could more Texans have done what Ted Cruz did and take off to go to Cancun? Probably. They had enough forewarning, I think, to better prepare themselves, but I don't think they really thought it was going to be that bad. So my heart does go out to them. I feel for them, and you're seeing some of the support, but it is a tragedy. When you look at a state like Michigan or New York, like I talked about before, they're better equipped to handle situations like this because they deal with that sort of weather a lot of the time. Texas, they did not heed any of the warnings from 2011, and they didn't do anything. So whose fault is it? It's probably a bunch of people's fault.
Yeah, it's never any one person's fault or any organization's fault. That was a really good synopsis of what happened. They pretty much they had some warning that some kind of a system was going to be coming through. They were ill prepared because of some of the recommendations that were made back in 2011. They did not heed those recommendations, and so they were ill prepared. And then the storm hit, and it was worse than they had anticipated. So there was a lot of people who were impacted by it who were really not prepared for it. And we hear all of these stories, like in these articles that I linked to in the description for this live show, and they have talked about people freezing to death in their homes, an 11-year-old kid freezing to death. We have an elderly lady or an elderly man freezing to death, and it breaks my heart that we are having to do this for. It's the weather, right? We have this sophisticated equipment that's very sensitive in nature that knows when these things are going to hit, and we should be able to be prepared. And at the same time, we're not. And I feel for the people of Texas because I think some of the people who are in charge of making the policies and laws about energy, they have not taken into consideration these recommended changes. So there's that. And then there's this whole political fallout that happened with the whole Ted takes a cruise to Cancun and
Yeah.
and then, just Texas wanting to be their own sort of state without any help from the federal government. I think it's something that we can learn from as citizens of any country, for sure. I wanted to check back in with Autumn. Autumn says that there's no snow in Northern Ireland. There's rain mixed with sunshine. Wow. That's an interesting combination. I love that too, because, well, that's what we call here in the Northwest. We call that bipolar weather, right? When we have weather that's just all over the place. So, yeah. So taking all that into consideration, we're going to talk a little bit about trauma from that lens, because the things that are happening in Texas right now, millions are still without power. Although lots have been restored, there have been a lot of things that have been happening because of the power outage. And so basically their power system was not well equipped to handle the demand that came with this really cold temperatures. So what they did was, instead of having a full blackout that came from a complete usage of this power, they decided to have rolling blackouts and to conserve the power. And they did. And the demand was still so great. Even after they told the Texans to please conserve, the demand was way too great. So the power system became overwhelmed. And when it failed, then a lot of other things happened as a result. So you couldn't get through on the roads. So the grocery stores weren't stocked, and you couldn't get any water through your pipes because most people's pipes were not properly insulated and they burst. And so there was all kinds of fallout from a failure to prepare. And I wanted you to speak on this because I know you've talked before to your employees as a supervisor about this preparation sort of a thing. You want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's you can either say the 5 P's or the 6 P's, and I'll like just go with the 5 P's. I know you like the 6 P's. We're going to make this a PG show, so it's the 5 P's. Okay, all right. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. Okay, there's another P in there, but we don't want to add it in there. So proper preparation prevents poor performance. So what can you do? Again, our technology these days is so great. You can tell when a weather system is coming in. Sometimes you can't tell how severe it's going to be, but you know it's coming. Last night here, it rained, and they called it the Pineapple Express, and it rained very hard for a long time here in the Pacific Northwest. But we knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. It didn't bother me. We knew the snowstorms were coming when they hit here about a week ago. But we were prepared for it. We went to the store, bought some provisions and things like that. I do believe that most Texans were aware that this weather system was coming in. Now, granted, we probably didn't know that it was going to be as severe as it was, where pipes were bursting and there was power outages because they didn't winterize everything. And then you had everybody trying to point their finger at other people. But, I believe there was ample opportunity to prepare themselves, much like on the Gulf Coast when a hurricane is coming. They have an opportunity to get the heck out of Dodge, or to board up their stores or their houses, or to move it to a safer location. That same sort of warning time frame was given to these people, and I think they knew. I think what made it so much more difficult this time is you mentioned it, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and it is difficult because most of those people, or a lot of those people, were already fighting shortages of food, money, things like that, to be able to afford, like Senator Cruz, to fly to Cancun and stay at a $300 a night resort. Not anybody can afford that. And you would have to imagine, at least I would, that some of the places that are sitting on the outskirts of where this weather system was moving in, they were probably jacking their prices up for everything. So it made it extremely difficult, but I think there was an opportunity. There was some other people that died too from carbon monoxide poisoning because they were sitting in their cars trying to stay warm. We had some of that happen here a few years ago where people were taking their little hibachi grills and bringing them inside and putting charcoal in. Excuse me. And they weren't cracking a window or something. My brother, Pastor Mark, can also attest to when we were going through this as kids, one of the things my dad did, and you and I did this too, Tracy, but as we got a kerosene heater. It was very affordable and it puts off a lot of heat. So those are just some of the things that they probably could have done. Could it have staved off all of what had happened? Probably not. But could it have saved a few more lives? Absolutely, I believe so.
Yeah. So prior preparation prevents piss poor performance, right?
Proper preparation, yes.
Oh,
or it could be prior preparation. It could be in this instance, yes.
Yeah, proper and prior. So there could be as many as 7 Ps.
Could be.
That we're looking at. Yeah. So when we talk about these things that are happening, these we call trauma in terms of trauma in the mental health avenues, we call little t trauma and big T trauma. And I really have never liked that because the big T traumas are going to be when you're in a war and you see your buddy die in front of you, or you're in a war and you see you have to actually kill a person. Those are the big T's, the wars, the like a criminal attack on you, or if you're a witness to something really traumatic that you see, those are supposedly the big T traumas. But I also think that the little t traumas are really a lot ignored, and they make just as much difference. What is the difference is your own perception of what's happening to you at the time and your own perceived safety level. And so I have to say that maybe when you were growing up, Timmy, and you and your brothers, you had a family of 6 and you had 4 able-bodied boys able to do work shoveling, and your dad, who was, I'm not sure, was your dad shoveling or what? What was he doing?
I think it was all hands on deck, and Pastor Mark can help me out with this. This is when we lived on Tonabee, and it was snowing so bad. We went out there in shifts of 2, and I believe our parents were involved in this as well, but we would go out there and shovel snow for a good 30 minutes and then come inside, and then the next team would take over. And this would go on for hours. And of course, once you felt like, oh, we're almost done, or the snow is stopping, here comes the snow plow, plowing the road and putting a 4-foot-high snow bank blocking your driveway that you just spent the last 3 hours shoveling. It was terrible. It was terrible. And then you'd have to go out there and try and knock it all down.
Well, and I know you because we've been married for what now, like almost 22 years now. Yeah, we've been together since 1995, and you're pretty resilient to this. I mean, you don't like it when it snows and does this weird stuff, but I guess you're not traumatized by this stuff, are you?
No, I'm used to it. Dealt with it for 17 years when I was in Michigan. And Mark can attest to this too. Usually when you get that first snowfall, that big heavy snowfall in Michigan, usually around end of December, early January, it doesn't go anywhere. It's just pretty much stays there until probably April, maybe. I think it's April. But you got to deal with it, and then it just snow on top of snow on top of snow. Some of it might melt, some of it might dissipate, but then you're going to get another snow, and that's kind of what we got hit with last week. Is we got that first snow on, I think it was Thursday. It was about, I think, 4 or 5 inches, but then that second blast that came in was another 10 inches, and then the blast after that was like another 10 inches. I think all told, we got over 2 feet of snow in the span of about 72 hours. And that's a lot for us. It's just about all gone now, thankfully. But and we probably won't see any more snow till who knows when. But
yeah, I should link to, I think I might have linked to Cliff Mass, weather guy. He's a great person to be able to have the I guess for Washington State anyway, he's from the University of Washington Meteorology Center, and he is almost 100% accurate about weather. But you were not traumatized by your weather. You always grew up knowing it, and there was nothing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, I grew up in California, and my very first incident of snow was a very light dusting when I was probably about 10 years old. And we were trying to make snowmen out of the little scrapings we could get out of the car. We were really excited about it. That was not a big deal. However, when I was about 15, we did have an incident where the wind was blowing a lot. And I remember looking out my mom's bedroom windows because we had these big eucalyptus trees, and they weren't even near our property. They were, here's our house, there's a canal, and then there's these eucalyptus trees. They were like swaying. And I said, whoa, I've never seen those sway so much. And I didn't think very much of it. And I was going to go to work that day. So I was in my bedroom and getting ready for work. And all of a sudden, the most biggest crash bang happened, and it shook the house. One of those eucalyptus trees had fallen on our roof and had broken through our roof. And if that wasn't what happened, my mother can correct me because she was there too. She was not in her room, thank goodness. But how I experienced it, that's the little T trauma, is how my mind took it, was that I was going to die. and even though I wasn't really going to die, that's what my mind told myself. And that's what the brain does when it's traumatized. And I wonder, especially I'm concerned about the Texans because they're not used to this kind of weather. It kind of reminds me a little bit about what I went through in that incident with the tree in our house, that many of these people are working through the survival piece of the trauma right now. And later on could possibly have what I have, which is every time the wind blows, I start to freak out, don't I, Timmy?
Yeah. You and I had a little bit of that. Gosh, what was it? Maybe almost 15 years ago, 2005, 2006. They had an ice storm that hit here, and we had lost power for about 4 or 5 days. And the kind of the interesting thing about that is usually in the summertime when I was growing up, we would go to the movie theater to stay cool. Well, somebody had just given us, like, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 free movie passes. It was the end of the year. It was out of one of them entertainment catalog things and so we were going to the movie theater not to stay cool, but to stay warm. And It was actually a place where we could use the bathroom and have facilities. And we saw like 3 or 4 movies in a span of a week. Which probably eclipsed the amount of movies we had seen in the past 2 years combined at the theater.
Right. Yeah, that was in 1996. We were 5 days without power, and we had just gotten a kerosene heater. And so we were trying to use it very sparingly because we had only a certain amount of kerosene. And we also, when you have a kerosene heater, you have to make sure and crack the windows because of the fumes of the kerosene heater. And so it really wasn't doing a whole lot of good because we'd have to crack the window and it was so cold outside.
Well, you could actually burn one of those if it's an open space. And I know Mark can probably attest to this. When we had one as kids, we were in this huge house, and it was the house on Tonaby that Mark had mentioned before. But it was such a big room. There was so much air circulation. We really didn't have to have a window cracked. There was enough circulation, thankfully. But that's pretty much what heated that whole house, is that kerosene heater.
Wow. Yeah, depending on the size of it, ours was fairly small, but it did cover quite a bit. And so I think what people could do to prepare for these sorts of things is to have some sort of a winter plan in mind. I know a lot of people in Texas didn't have fireplaces. They didn't have alternative forms of heating. Some people were reported to be, using their charcoal grill outside or in their garage space. And it's fine if you're safe, but then there's the risk of fire as well. There are people who are burning parts of their furniture. And
we had a friend that did that a few years ago.
We had a friend who lived on an island around here, and he had his home, and he was completely snowed in. He couldn't move, and his power was out, and he was sick with the flu, and he started burning parts of his deck.
He started cutting up his deck and burning part. He started rationalizing, what part of the deck can I go without? So he took his table saw or chain, or whatever saw he had, and he was cutting up parts of his deck so he would have wood to burn. Yeah. Oh my gosh, how terrible is that? Could you imagine doing something like that? It's like, oh, what part of my deck do I not need?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I remember one year I had a bunch of bills that I had paid, and I just had kept them in a box. Well, I just started burning them in my fireplace. I was lucky enough to have a fireplace one time when the power went out and I was on my own. And so, yeah, you find things to burn, right? I don't really need this. Let's just burn it. And because your survival instinct kicks in. And when your survival instinct kicks in, various areas of your brain light up, like in your limbic system, like the amygdala, the emotional sort of register of, am I actually really going to be in trouble here? And what do I do about that? And that's exactly what happens when you're in a survival situation. And I think that probably a lot of people in Texas are experiencing that right now. And I know I had too, when that tree hit our house when I was 15 years old. And so now every time, this is again how the brain works. Now every time I see, and okay, I'm not as bad as I used to be because I've gotten a lot of therapy for it. And I don't know why this incident really shook me so much. But when I see the trees start to bend, or when the trees bend, like you'll see in the film that we're going to show you, when the trees start to bend, I start to get really super scared about the trees falling into our house and damaging parts of our house because of that incident that I had. It's not like it's rational for my brain to think about this, but it is definitely an emotional connection that my brain has to trees that are flopping over, or wind that is blowing trees and trees are doing that. It's that visual picture I can remember of those eucalyptus trees, and then the subsequent bashing on top of our house that my brain has not fully been able to get over throughout all these years. I mean, am I 55 or 50? I'm 55. Yeah. So that's a long time, right? For that to have been a reality for me. And
well, it's a scary situation when you think about it. Autumn has a really interesting comment here. You should put that up. And this could be an interesting comment to anybody. What weird object have you burned to stay warm? You know, we talked about our friend burning part of his deck. And here's Autumn. She's burning clothes and old shoes. You know, I don't know if maybe you could attest. I don't know if it's fight or flight. You get to a point where you got to make a decision. You know, it's like, okay, what's important to me? Hey.
Yeah, well, so the right side of your brain being that, well, this side actually, because the amygdala is right here, and it's an almond shaped part of your brain that is the fight or flight center, and that lights up when there is danger, and it communicates with the visual part of your brain, which is probably in the visual cortex, which we call the watchtower, and we figure out what to do from there. Some of the problems that happen with PTSD, and we can talk about this in another live stream with another professional, is that the left side of the brain is also affected on trauma. And so it affects the verbal expression. And so when you're trying to express yourself or say what you need, it is hampered because the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain are not communicating with each other very well. And so very much you are in reptilian mode. You are in the position of an animal in danger. And so your brain just sort of snaps into this survival mode. And I think that maybe that could have been happening with Autumn. If there was things that you could spare and that don't, I was looking here and I was like, I've got stuffed animals. Well, who knows if I burned them, if there was like some weird thing inside of them that would emit some fumes that were bad for me. But clothes are probably definitely something that you could use. And
it's a great way to get a jump start on spring cleaning.
I know. I have to calm the closet chaos in one of my future videos because I've really got to do something about the clothes in my closet. Maybe I could just save them for fuel. So
we'll send them to Autumn. She can burn them.
Yeah, and she's got peat too. Yeah, peat is I think their form of like I think just like is it wood or maybe Autumn
I
can
think it's
tell
like
us a little bit
what
more
we
about
would
that. That
call
is.
for the pellets for a pellet stove, I guess. I don't know.
Oh yes, that's right. That's for another time, maybe, unless Pastor Mark wants to talk about the fact that he needs to stay away from lighters. But yeah, so Michigan, you guys shoveled in shifts, and for me, I got sort of dinged by the eucalyptus tree. This is my cat Malia. She's popping in to say hi. Say hi, Malia.
So I guess peat is coal, is what Mark says. So okay, good to know.
Okay, great. Yeah, it is. So yeah, and then there's the lack of power has always freaked me out, and not just because I need to keep my hair looking great, but I think more is because I have to. Well, when I was younger, definitely it was like, oh my gosh, I can't go out with hair looking like this, but I don't care anymore. I just stuff it in a hat. But now it's more like I don't know, when the body gets older, it's harder to generate heat. I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself very well, but I do have concerns about power being out because of my body's ability or inability to generate
Well, I can
heat.
give everybody a surefire recipe to ensure that your power will never go out again. And that is go buy a generator. Because once you buy the generator, your power will never go out again because you'll never need it. We bought a generator, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and I think the power gone out once, and it was in the summertime, and we ran the generator for 3 or 4 hours. Mm-hmm. Now we've done some things, rebuilt the or I had a friend of mine rebuild the carburetor, and we changed the battery out so it's an electric start, and it will power probably about 80% of our entire house. That's how big of a generator it is. But we've never had to use it, thank God. Mm-hmm. But if we did, we know what to do. So
you know what to do. Yeah, I thought this was right. And thanks, Pastor Mark, for that explanation about the peat. And I thought I remember it being a peat moss, because I think peat moss being the stuff that they sell in stores to.
Yeah, Autumn just clarified it. She's got it down there.
Yeah,
there you go.
Sods. So they're probably dried and put into like brick or something like that. And so, yeah, okay. So she just confirmed that was right. Yeah, that's very interesting. I have always heard about peat being a form of fuel, but I wasn't really sure what it was. So thank you for that.
Wow. Okay, vegetable matter. Interesting.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, geez.
Well, so anyway, we're talking about how to actually cope. What would you, and I don't know if Pastor Mark wants to come up, just nod your head if you have any ideas about how to cope. I'm in the middle of a very happy cat right here. So, but yeah, what would you say the number one thing that we use to cope with this unexpected snow? What do you think that we did, like the number one thing that we did?
Well, we knew it was coming, so I went to the store and bought a bunch of extra things, like a case of drinking water, some extra provisions. Because the one cool thing, I guess, if you want to look at a silver lining, is if the power goes out in cold weather like this, as long as you got an outdoor refrigerator or something, you really don't have to worry about your food thawing or unfreezing. So that's a good thing. But I made sure the generator worked, got some extra fuel for the generator, continued to shovel the driveway to make sure there was a clear path to the main street out that we have in case there was an emergency. I made you stay home when it was snowing. I told you not to go because you could work from home just as easily as you could work in your office. Just being prepared, buying some extra provisions, things that you're going to need and be ready just in case something, tragic happens. And of course, the more prepared you are, proper preparation prevents poor performance or whatnot. You're better prepared. And obviously, if you do prepare yourself and you hope for the best, prepare for the worst,
right,
is the way to look at it. And that's what we did. and we wound up somewhere in the middle. We thankfully we never lost our power. Thankfully we didn't have to go anywhere, leave our house until the roads were clear. So we kind of lucked out there.
Yeah, and I also think that mental preparedness really came into play with me anyways, because I wrote down what is the worst thing that can possibly happen right now? What is the very worst thing? And then we wrote a solution, a possible solution next to it so that we would be prepared if it did happen. So we were prepared for these trees to come down on our house, break all our windows, and be able to find a safe spot, and which we had. We had planned that out. Yeah. And maybe some people might think that's a little bit paranoid, which is another P, but it wasn't. It was really a mindful way of preparing for what could actually happen. We were completely unprepared one year where we had a vacation. We went to Palm Springs and we went with Pastor Mark's twin brother, Scott, our brother. And we went, and the whole time, the whole trip was a series of unexpected events. It was crazy. In fact, if you want to see the tail end of the experience that we had, go to my, I think it's called the Preparing for Chaos. And that was the very first film that I did this year, and it's about golf. That was when we were in Palm Springs. And at that very moment, when we were in Palm Springs enjoying golf, we had snowmageddon here in Washington, and we couldn't actually get home because there was this huge snowfall that blanketed everything, took out the power, and nobody was able to get in to feed our cats. I was freaking out, wasn't I?
Yeah, that the difference between that snowstorm and this snowstorm is I don't think that there might have been a little bit more snow that time than this time, but this snowstorm, it came in like three phases. There was a little small, then a big, then a little bit bigger. But in between those phases that we had, there was a period where it didn't freeze. So I think in the first one back a couple of years ago, I think what happened is we got that first dumping. I think it started to melt a little bit, but then the cold weather came in. It froze all the melted snow to make ice, and then it dumped snow on top of that.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was more snow. I think it was that in between cooling that made the snow melt a little bit, and then it froze, and then that's what didn't go away. And you're right, we couldn't get home. I actually called my work and said, we were leaving the airport, had to get dug out of the carport where we were parked at the airport. And we couldn't get all the way home because the road here to our house was not plowed. So we had to get a hotel room in town. It was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And just thinking about that, and the fact that we knew we had no power because I was in touch with one of our neighbors, which is what I want to bring up here for the people who are listening. And I wonder if most people even know their neighbors. I was so happy that I had Mary's number on my phone. So I was texting her like, what's going on? And then my pet sitter's number. And we coordinated an effort to be able to have Mary walk over here and Carrie, who is our pet sitter, hide the key somewhere so that Mary could get in our house. We really took it was creativity, it was knowing your neighbor, and it was asking for help. And I think a lot of people miss those steps. And I have to wonder for the people who are just kind of shut in their house and they were found frozen to death, if they even thought about reaching out to somebody or calling 911, or even if they had a cell connection or a neighbor or somebody. But I really want to emphasize that we do need to know our neighbors, and not just because of safety reasons if we're in trouble, but so that we can help people out when they're in trouble, and also so that we just kind of can know if we have creepers in the neighborhood. I'll be honest, you do want to know your neighbors.
Through all of this terrible tragedy that's happening down there in Texas, there has been some pretty nice stories. And to your point about knowing your neighbor, there was a UPS delivery driver down there in Texas that obviously got stuck, couldn't drive on the roads. They were so icy. And there were some complete strangers that didn't even know this delivery driver, took took that delivery driver into their home, and she stayed there for a few days.
Wow.
I mean, it would be like us having some UPS driver outside, if the weather was that bad, taking somebody in that we've never met before.
Oh my gosh, we had that truck driver that one time. Remember that car carrier that came around the loop?
Oh, good Lord.
And it was just stuck there. And he was going to try and go back down to pick up a car down there. And you were just like, there's no way you're going to get down there because of the street.
I told him. I mean, if you look at where we live on this, let me see if I can get this right. We live on a loop. It's just a circle, but we're at the top of the loop. And the road goes downhill. So if you once you pass our house and go about 50 feet, maybe 100 feet down the road a little bit, you're going downhill, and you will stay downhill, go all the way around, and then on the other side, the circle, completing the circle or the loop, there's no way you're getting back up. So once you go down the hill, forget about it.
I'm going to go ahead and show the video of the snow day and see. It's just a short video. I've got 2 of them, but they're pretty short. So I'm just going to go ahead and show those right now.
So there's my wife, God bless her soul. She's out here trying to help. She's banging the trees. Look at her. What you doing over there? Good job. But the reason I did this right here is because when you look, you're coming up that hill. And this kind of gives a spot where people can at least get a little traction before they get out to the main drag up there. Now my mailbox is there. I was thinking about shoveling that up, but I think I'll be okay. This is more than enough. It's more than anybody else does around here. Most people never shovel. I tend to wonder if anybody even has a shovel. But where you see where the cement is down here, well, beyond that, just in this area here, that's all rock up in here all the way out to the street. So you can kind of see, I cut away some of it there. It's just rock in this portion. So we can just drive up to our driveway and get to this point, we're going to be fine. So I spread a bunch of salt. I didn't have any rock salt, but I did have a 25-pound bag of table salt, which I must have bought last year to prepare me for this. I never used it, so I just put a bunch of that down, maybe about a couple pounds of just table salt. If I need to, I'll put some more down, but after I got done shoveling, I had to sweep the driveway, which is crazy. So now I gotta take the trash and the recycling out. Oh, fun.
And that was just day 1, right?
Yeah, that was day one. So I started it. It was probably about 4 or 5 inches of snow down there. So I shoveled the driveway, and then I went ahead and shoveled where that rock portion was. And then I shoveled all the way out across the whole street. And what I was getting at is like I was talking about with that loop, you're coming up the hill if you're heading toward the main drag. And if I didn't shovel that, you would lose momentum. You would start to spin your wheels and you wouldn't get up there. So that gave them an opportunity to get some traction, get up to the corner, and maybe make that turn, because that main drag usually stays fairly clear. They will have a plow come through there, but usually there's enough traffic on there to keep it clear. So yeah. After I got done shoveling, I had to sweep it, and then I laid table salt. Yeah, the salt that you sprinkle on whatever food that you have. Yeah, I had a 25-pound bag, so what the heck? Salt is salt.
Yeah, our driveway was the steak, and you were just seasoning it with salt, right?
Yeah, that's what I did. Yes.
Yeah, that was crazy. I looked at you out there, and then I looked at the trees. So I did some little banging of the trees because I was really freaked. Again, I'm freaked out about the trees. I'm like, I don't want the branches to break off or have the trees come down on our house and bust through our windows or whatever. And so I think I did okay as far as the flashback part of my trauma that I've had, weather related trauma. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this, to introduce PTSD and how the brain is on post-traumatic stress. And it's not just about the weather, but since the weather's in the news right now, I just thought I'd introduce the topic, and because Crystal had asked about it. So yeah, our brains do some things that are not typical when we have just our normal relaxed state and we're safe. When we're not safe, our brains light up in 3 different areas. The right side, which is the side of with the amygdala, the limbic system, and the left brain too. Both of those sides of our brain are involved with trauma. And then what happens is our decision making goes right into the animalistic mode. Like me, I was an animal with the trees. I don't think I was actually experiencing PTSD. I was having a little fun, but it was kind of stressful for me just to think, okay, that's round 1. Now what's going to happen with round 2?
Yeah, we got lucky, I think, with this snowfall. It was unlike the last one that we weren't here to witness, because again, like I said before, it didn't warm up a little bit to melt some of it and then freeze. It never did that. I mean, it did get cold, and some of the slush did turn to a small layer of ice, but it warmed back up the next day to melt it all. It never sat there for 2 or 3 days as ice. So we got lucky in it. And then between myself and our 2 neighbors down the road, we did a pretty good job of keeping everything clear. So we got lucky there.
Yeah, I know, Autumn, I was thinking about Little House on the Prairie and that book, The Long Winter, and just the hardships that people at least in our country, and I don't know if Ireland doesn't get a whole lot of snow. I do know that in the Midwest you do. And so when people were traveling west and settling in certain places, they had these hard winter. I believe it was not Wisconsin, it was Minnesota that they ended up settling in. Yeah, so it's Minnesota, which is really super harsh winters, and they had their shanty or their lean-to or their cabin that they had built, and they had to survive in a lot of really creative ways. And so they depended on their neighbors. They depended on their own creativity, their resources that they had. They did some really resourceful things in those times too. And this is what I think I love, is that we can learn and tap into our creativity, and we can learn for next time to be, I don't know what you would call it, resourceful, I guess, right?
Yeah, I've already made a decision that I'm going to get a snowblower, even though up here we're lucky. Well, here's the one thing. Okay, like I said, if you want to make sure you'll never lose power again, buy a generator. Well, if I buy a snowblower, I know it'll probably never dump any snow out here significant enough to have to use one. But I've told both my neighbors, I says, like, once I get it, hey, we're going to use it. We're going to share it. We're going to snow blow the street. We're going to snow blow our driveways. Because an interesting thing that did happen, I mean, you mentioned about depending upon your neighbors and things like that. And that is a great thing. And we got lucky the last snowstorm that our neighbor Mary was able to come over and take care of the cats and things like that. But while me and my neighbor Tim, ironically enough, his name was Tim, we were out there shoveling the corner near the main drag. We had another neighbor who had passed by twice, and then he had stopped. And he says, you know, you could hire me, and I'll get on my little four-wheeler that has a scoop on the front, or a plow, or whatever the heck you call it. Mark will help me out with that. Attached to the front of it, and he can come and plow the street for us. And I thought, if my first instinct, wow, that's pretty neat. My second was like, why would I want to hire you? You're my neighbor. I think you would want to come down and do it just out of the graciousness of your heart to help other neighbors out. But he was looking to capitalize on an opportunity, and I get that. But I tell you that story to tell you this other story, that when the pandemic first hit the United States, they started saying, you know, wearing a face covering would help. And we have this app, and I'm sure it's an app that's available everywhere. It's called the Nextdoor app. And one of the neighbors posted on this Nextdoor app that, hey, I took my spare time, my spare materials, and my spare effort, and I made a bunch of free face coverings, and I put them at this local convenience store that if anybody wants one, you can come get it for free. So there's the difference there is she could have sold those masks at a profit and maybe donated the money or whatever, or put it in her bank account. It didn't matter. But she was making them and giving them away for free. And here's this other guy looking to make a buck off of people. So my neighbor looked at the guy, and he basically said, you know, why would I want to give up my exercise so you can come plow this for money? He's like, nah, we're okay.
Well, and you saw the distance between our house and the corner, and that's not even Tim's territory. It's not even our territory either, really.
No.
But the second video kind of shows a little bit more about how our neighbors were involved. And so let's take a peek at that snow day 2 now.
Oh, yeah, day 2.
Day 2. And then we'll wrap up, and maybe if Mark wants to come on, we'll bring him on, because I'm sure he's got a lot of skills to offer us.
Oh, yeah.
Here for sure. Okay. Snow day 2.
Okay.
It is not stopping. Those of you who are interested to know, oops, I got my tape measure out here. Now this probably isn't the most scientific way of figuring out how deep this snow is, but I'm actually just gonna try and make my way over here to the pergola if I can. I'm not even sure when I'm on solid ground here. Okay. So, I'm going to try and figure out how deep this is here. Let's see here. Whoa. Okay. So my guess is that's about the top. So it looks like maybe about 15 inches so far, and it's still coming down. Well, here I am. It's probably about 3 hours later. The driveway's done. It started to warm up a little bit. It actually was raining. The snow did stop. Got it up to the end of the actual cement driveway. And then I got this gravelly part right in here. And then the road begins, and I shoveled out a good 20-foot section. You see my neighbor down there, he's doing the same. Hey, Dennis! And then I think my other neighbor here, he's getting ready. I thought we moved away from this crap! Well, there we are.
I wanted to make sure everybody knew that you weren't the only one doing work. I did. I helped.
I knew you were working. Yeah, I went down there to talk to the neighbor, Dennis. I had worked. He wasn't the guy that was helping me shovel the corner. That was our other neighbor, Tim. Dennis is our neighbor on the right as you look down that street. But I went down there and I told him he used to live in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And the first thing I asked him, I says, "So where's your snowplow?" And he says, "I got rid of it." And he goes, "But I kept my snow boots." And I told him, I says, "A lot of good that's doing us now." But no, it was doing him well. So yeah, I told him I was going to get a snowblower, and we're going to share it. And if I see that guy post that post again about hooking his plow up to the front of his 4-wheeler and going on, I'm going to post something else that says, "Hey, I'll come do it for free. I don't care." I mean, I just think it's a neighborly thing to do. And they were helpful to us a couple years ago, and I just like to return the favor. So
I know. Yeah. And Autumn says she didn't see any snowmen, and I was thinking, because after the snowplow came through, there was these little, it was like Stonehenge a little bit. There was these like little plops of snow. And I was thinking we should just make little snow animals and, snow ducks and snow bunnies and stuff like that. And never did have the opportunity to do that. And I didn't make a snow angel, and I didn't make a snowman. I probably should have had a little bit more fun. I think that's a great point, is that when these things happen, I think sometimes the fun-o-meter, at least for me anyway, goes out the window, and it probably needed to come back a little bit. Like, I should have just made a snowman. I love that. Like, when there's snow, make snowmen, right?
Yeah, or you can make some yellow snow cones.
Yeah, you can just do that. You can totally do that. Does Pastor Mark want to come up and offer us some wisdom? Here, I'm going to bring you up because he has a question about that. Is it a 2x4 and what your process was? Because I don't think he saw that before. Okay, I'm going to bring you up. Ready, set, wing. There's Pastor Mark.
All right, so that was a 1x4 or a 3/4 by 4. It was just a that I had in my garage that I had to, when the trucks drive over the snow and they pack it down. My shovel has a crack in it, so I had to get that to dig it all out.
Gotcha.
Yeah, our shovel has a crack in it, and we just realized that during this whole snowstorm, but it got us through. So tell us what you do, because you've been facing some pretty harsh weather in Michigan where you're at.
Yeah, when there's not a lot of snow, and it's just light dust, I'll put the salt in my fertilizer spreader, and that's how I'll salt my driveway and my sidewalks and stuff. It puts it out pretty evenly, but it's not uncommon for us to get dumped 12, 14 inches at a time here in Michigan. So, and then I got a snowblower, like Timmy was saying, so it's the same amount of work for me, whether there's 3 inches on the ground or whether there's 14 or 16 inches on the ground. It's the same amount of work for me. The snowblower does it all. So I'm just like...
So you just wait until the snow gets like really high, and then you just do it all at once instead of doing a bunch of...
Right.
Oh, because that's what you guys used to do when you were kids. You used to do it in shifts.
Right. Yeah. So, instead of going out there and 3-4 times during the day, I just wait till it's done, and then I just go out there with the snowblower, and it gets it all the way down to the cement. And, if you got little rocks and stuff, the rocks are usually frozen into the ground anyway, so the snowblower will just ride over it, and get the snow.
Oh.
So,
because it's up on wheels, right?
Yeah, the 2 back ends on wheels, and the front end's got a little blade on it, but it just goes over it.
Yeah, I thought the snowblower that he was talking about was kind of like the leaf blower. I thought it was something that you held in your hands and went brrrr, and I thought, man, that's a lot of work. But then I saw it's kind of like a lawnmower, right? And you just
Yeah.
wheel it over and then it blows it out. And then you have, what's the dome? You said you have a dome.
It's a cover. Didn't I? I think I sent Tim a picture of it.
Yeah, I got a picture of it. Basically, what it's like is think of it as an umbrella that comes all the way down. So it comes all the way down, and because when a snowblower, think about just the aspects and the wording: snow blower. It's blowing snow. So that snow could blow right back on you. That's why when you see people doing the snowblower, they're like this. You know, they got their face all covered up. So with the dome, and I've seen this, the dome, you know, you're under there, you're just pushing along, la 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 la.
Okay.
And you got the dome,
Yeah.
and it protects you from the snow coming back at you.
It's like,
Oh,
It's
like
like-
a motorcycle shield.
okay,
a
it's like a
windshield.
porta potty. Think of a porta potty. Okay,
God, please.
take the door off the porta potty and put that door on the snowblower machine. So you're covered on 2 sides and the top.
Oh,
I mean,
got it. Yeah.
3 sides.
You know, the 3 sides.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So that's a pretty cushy outfit. It works pretty good though, Mark. I mean,
Oh yeah, after
job
about
done?
10 minutes, I unzip my coat, take my hats and gloves off because the engine's right there too, so it warms you up, and
Oh.
you know. So I just go, and you can go pretty quick.
That's
So,
gas powered.
Yeah, straight
Alright.
gas. So
Yeah, like Timmy said, we would probably be guaranteed that we'd never get snow again if we bought one of those. So we're going to go ahead and purchase one, and we'll have it available for the neighborhood in case it gets that bad again. So
Yeah.
that's just our community sort of thing. What do you guys do? Because Mark, I know you guys had just, I think it was it 5 days or 3 days? You were without power, or you and Andrea were, right?
yeah, and
How
then
did
the
you guys survive? It was
the
really super
generator
cold.
we had, our mother-in-law gave to us, and that one took a dump. So I went out and bought a new one, and it ran the TV, the fridge, of course my internet, my cable, you know, my computer. You know, it ran pretty much everything in the house. So we
Wow.
just ran that for 3 days. But you know, yeah, like Google. But when we ran the kerosene when we were little, kerosene gas was like 50 cents a gallon. Well, I bought a kerosene heater last year, and gas is like $2.50 a gallon, and it's a lot. You use a lot of gas in that kerosene heater, and it wasn't worth it. So I used it for maybe 7-8 times, and now it just sits in my basement, you know, just in case of an emergency.
Wow. Yeah. Well, so, and some people don't like the smell very much of kerosene as
Right.
well, although you get used to it after a while, but
I remember
And I
that was
said-
our main source of heat when we lived on Tonopah.
Yeah.
Remember, he would put that right where the fireplace is,
Yeah, that's what.
And-
Yeah, that's where
and
we were
that's
gonna
what
put
it
ours.
was. Yeah, that,
well,
Yeah.
do you have any other people who have unexpected things happen in their lives? Mark, do you have any go-to skills that
Almost
you
done,
use? Oh,
That was the wife.
that was Andrea. Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say that you do that is the most helpful when the unexpected happens?
Well, you know, it's like you guys said, you got to prepare. You know, if it's light, you know, if it's and you know it's gonna freeze, you know, lay down some salt. You know, I mean, it just and like you said, make sure you have your necessities to get you through the next 2, 3, 4 days. Like Timmy was saying, buy an extra case of water. You know, definitely buy an extra 4 or 5 bottles of wine. You know, because you're not gonna be able to go anywhere, and you know, but just make sure you have your food so you don't have to go out. That's the most important. If you don't have to go out, don't go out. You know, the roads are going to be atrocious. You got to give the guys time to take care of the roads. It's just prepare. You know, use common sense. And I know that's becoming rare these days, but you know, it's just
Do you
Yeah,
do
let's-
you store up food as far as like having, some of the stuff in your pantry items and all the
Yeah.
stuff that you can, that's what we've done too for a while. I don't know that everybody does that or can do that, but that is definitely something that you'd probably want to.
Yeah, I
get a-
like-
get
I
a
like
camping
buying-
propane stove too. That's helpful too. You know,
I got one of them.
those.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I like buying. You know, like when I buy my peanut butter or Miracle, I like buying 2, 3 of them
Yeah.
at a time. That way
Yeah.
there, you know,
It's not going to go bad.
no.
Yeah, right.
You know.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I'm glad you guys. How much do you still have snow on the ground there, Mark?
Yeah, it's on the ground. There's a lot on the grass, but the sidewalks and stuff, they're pretty well taken care of now. So, but it's
Yeah.
still comes up to almost my knees, the snow on the grass.
See, that's the other issue with Texas is not only were the people, not prepared, the government wasn't prepared. They didn't have snowplows. They didn't have salt.
Right.
That's why the roads were so treacherous.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have salt to lay on the roads. They were ill prepared. And I understand it to a certain point. But again, I go back to this theory of technology and how they knew this was coming. They knew it was coming. So the roads could have been better cared for, so to speak.
Right.
I mean, here we don't use salt on the roads because it corrodes the cars, and because the snow that we just had is pretty much all gone now. So we lay sand on the roads.
Right. Yeah.
So it gets muddy and dirty and whatever. But I know in Michigan and parts of the Midwest, they put a lot of salt on the roads because it melts. Texas could have done that. They could have laid some salt on the roads, but they didn't have any because.
Yeah, I know, and it's mainly the southern part of Michigan that they use the salt. Because when I lived in Hillman, by Alpena, so that would be right about up here. Anywhere above there, everybody uses sand. Because there's a lot of hills, and it's very hilly up there. So the salt really don't, help on the hills. So that's why we use the sand. And then you'll see the big 50-gallon drums on the side of the road. And if you ever wonder what they're for when you're traveling, is inside there is sand. So if you get stuck, there's sand there. You can put underneath your car tires to get you some traction to get you up the hill.
Oh wow, I did not know that. Now I do.
Yeah, I do. You are a mountain, an encyclopedia of information, useful information. Survivor men, right? I guess.
Yeah. Markipedia.
Markipedia. Yeah, right. And Google it, right?
Yes, right.
Well, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you, as usual, just being a moderator and helping out on live stream. Our chat is usually pretty good, but the one day you're not here, it'll just all erupt. So I feel like you're just as good a luck as my Gronkowski helmet. So we're gonna go ahead and close then, and yeah. Oh, we just have Cat Day. Hello.
Oh, look at that.
Wow.
Who's that?
That's Henry.
Henry?
Yeah.
Hi, Henry.
That looks kind of like Felix.
I know.
Oh, wow.
Up here. Ready?
And it's a boy. Well, of course,
Yeah.
Henry, right? Yeah. Oh, see, look. Hi.
Hi, Henry.
Hi.
He likes to go after the mouse.
We're so married. We wave at the same time, too. Oh, wow. Nice. Yeah, no, good seeing Henry. Good seeing my cat, Malia. She's shy.
Yeah.
She never comes up, and especially not when I'm doing some sort of computer thing. She knows better. So, well, I hope you guys are good. Maybe we'll be able to see you sometime after, maybe this summer. We'll be able to
they
see
say
you.
by April it should be pretty well, nipped in the butt. So we'll see.
It'll be
hope
open
so.
season. Anybody that wants one will get one. I think it's important that everybody does get one.
Yeah.
Because it just helps the world out, not just
Oh
us.
yeah.
The vaccine.
And they're saying they think that you're gonna have to have some kind of certificate or something if you want to start flying again.
Now, I heard Mom and Dad might be getting theirs soon.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Dad went to go register today, but they said it was all filled up right now. They didn't have no appointments or something.
Oh, jeez.
But
How
it
is
shouldn't be
that?
too much longer.
Why aren't those vaccine places running 24/7? I mean, you know what? If somebody told me that, hey, if you come down here to the clinic at 2:00 in the morning, you'll get a vaccine. You know what? I'd be there at 1:30 in the morning getting
Absolutely.
my vaccine. I mean, I don't care. 3 in the morning. I'd be there at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
I just want to get it over with. Give me my vaccine. I know everybody wants the Johnson & Johnson one that's only one shot. But I don't care. I just want to get vaccinated,
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. I'm glad
Yeah.
I'm glad Autumn's parents got theirs.
Right.
That's good,
Ireland has it going on, apparently.
We got a couple of friends that have gotten theirs, and we got another friend that said his is coming. I think
Good.
within the next couple of weeks. So
Yep. Yeah. I'm patient. I'm going to wait, just see what happens. But I think that maybe we'll be able to see you guys this year. That would be really
Yeah.
super cool if we could arrange that somehow.
Yeah.
So,
get that spare room ready. We'll be there.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and do. What are we going to do? I don't know how we're going to
What are
close
you
this
ending
out.
with?
I do have an ending here, but it's mainly the same pictures that I did the beginning with, but just a different music. And so enjoy. And again, good seeing you guys. Thanks for joining
Take
us
care,
all
everybody.
on Calming the Chaos. Alrighty.